All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Zoom book launch party of Last Bid for a Dying Earth. I'm Mike Jack Stumbos. I'm going to be hosting and emceeing this, and the book is by Mike Wyant Jr. I'm going to go ahead and share the cover so that we can get this awesome cover up here. Last Bid
Really
for a
cool.
Dying Earth by Mike Wyant Jr., book one of the Anisian Convergence. And Mike, if I said that wrong, please correct me.
No, you got it. You nailed it.
Excellent. Well, Mike, thank you very much for being here and helping set all this up and getting everyone here who has possibly read the book or has possibly not read it and is very excited to be able to dive into this series. And Mike, I would like for you to get us started and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the book, if you can give us the quick teaser version.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let me continue pretending like I was prepared for this by stalling and being very, gesticulating and such.
Gesticulating's good.
Yeah, just a lot of action. Just got to get that movement in there.
Yeah.
Well, the book.
Because you didn't expect to talk about your book at the book
I know
launch.
for some reason I'm surprised. Well, the book, it's a near future sci-fi about a young woman who gives control of her body over to an artificial intelligence for one of the last tickets off of the Earth. Climate change has gone crazy. There are massive storms every day across the continent. And the last bid for humanity is the idea of leaving the Earth for another garden world. A chance encounter with Dave, another character in the book, ends up dropping her in the middle of a conspiracy that leaves the fate of humanity on her shoulders. She has to choose what happens.
Yeah, that's absolutely no pressure right there.
No, just like a normal daily thing,
And because we're dealing with science fiction and you said near future, on the cover we're seeing this awesome cable heading up from the Earth. I'm going to assume that's space elevator. Yeah,
it is. It's not necessarily book accurate, but it is really frigging cool.
It is a very cool cover. Yeah. Excellent. And hang on, I'm going to change the view mode so we can get. There we go. And Mike, I have to ask, what got you started? What first gave you the idea for this story?
It started actually with what ended up being the second chapter in the book. I had this weird, for a while I worked retail, and anybody who's worked retail knows that you start to feel like an automaton. Everything's rehearsed, everything comes out the same. All your smiles look the same after a while. And I just had this dream, like, what if I didn't have to do any of that and I could just give over control of my body to an artificial intelligence to just like do all this grunt work? Like, just pay me, and I'll do 12-hour shifts. I'm fine with that. I'm all right. I can live with 12-hour shifts if I don't actually have to experience it. And my immediate response was then to be the guy on the other side watching these artificially intelligent or AI controlled staff members going, I hate this. Why do they do that? I can't talk to anybody. I can't get anybody's opinion. Almost like being on hold on a computerized phone line. You're always going to get the same lines. So chapter 2 starts with this guy bemoaning the fact that he can't break these people out of the stasis they're in because the AI has gotten too good at stopping him from breaking the code.
Right. Sort of like in a video game when you're talking to the same NPC and they've got a limited number of things they can say.
Yep.
Yeah.
You go through the script and it starts over again. You're like, okay, well, this isn't fun anymore.
Awesome. And might be jumping a little bit further ahead, but want to ask, so about the series. This is book one of the Anisian Convergence.
Yes.
And I know that there are a couple more that are already scheduled to come out.
Right.
How many books do you have planned for the series?
5 in total. So there are 3 books already written. The 4th one is almost done. I just took a little break so I can make sure I wrap everything up properly.
Yep.
And then as soon as I get the 4th one done, I'll start outlining the 5th one. Excellent. So my goal is to have them all done, and to Chris, at least with plenty of time that they could possibly all come out by the end of the year.
Yeah. Awesome. This does give us convenient segue. So we do have the publisher here. So Chris Kennedy of Chris Kennedy Publishing, and Theogony Books is the imprint that is running this one, unless I'm mistaken. And Chris, you can let me know.
No, that's
so-
absolutely correct. And I was looking at the schedule. Last Bid for Dying Earth, May 27th. Fallen Hunter, book 2, July 1st. Focus on the Wind, book 3, August 5th. Charred Hunter, 9 September. And I don't have the 5th book, so that hasn't gone onto the schedule yet. But you can see that that's going about every 5 or 6 weeks between books. So assuming that he gets it to me, in a relatively near term, yeah, absolutely, all 5 should be out by the end of the year.
Awesome. Yeah. So for those of you who have possibly started the first book and desperately want to know the next one, you don't have to wait very long. And otherwise, people who like series and you want to sink your teeth into a 5-book series, you'll have one of those to dig into pretty quickly, with about a month gap at a time. Cool. All right. I want to turn things back to Mike Wyant Jr. One of the things that I like to do at the book launch events is have a passage reading so that you can hear it in the author's voice if possible, and be able to get a bit of a preview there. Mike, do you have a chapter or passage queued up so you can read it out loud?
Yeah, I figured I'd start with chapter 1 since I think it's relatively hooky.
Yeah. All right. Well,
just
Mike,
wanna
go
make
ahead.
All right. Sarah shouldn't remember the blood, not the hovering crimson globules, nor the harsh stink of bleaching cleaners. When you became staff, you were supposed to black out. Should be as easy as closing your eyes and opening them 12 hours later. But Sarah remembered. Usually just a strain of scrubbing floors or a flash of a face, but that wasn't supposed to happen. And if she wanted off the doomed earth, if she wanted a chance somewhere safe, somewhere with a future, no one could know. The NDA had made it very clear any deviance was cause for termination. They won't find out. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut. They're nothing, just glimpses. It doesn't matter. But there'd never been so much blood before. Her gut twisted. Bile splashed the back of her throat. The ache of a dozen hours cleaning the ladder, the space elevator leading to her salvation orbit settled into her limbs, her bones. Outside, a howling gale swept by, sending the high rise vibrating through the soles of her work boots. The chill of her tiny, stark white apartment settled into her skin, somehow amplifying the smell of sweat and the citrus cleaner speckling her baby blue staff jumpsuit. Before her sat the toilet, right next to the pod-like UV shower and porcelain pedestal sink. The wall behind was a tile backsplash, grout darkening and cracking with age and lack of maintenance. And secured to that wall was the mirror she avoided. She made to rub her eyes to try and push away the memories, but froze as her skin came into focus. Burnt sienna flecks raced along the backs of her hands, up her forearms. A hum built in her brain, drowning out the summer nor'easter building beyond the walls. Cursory inspection sent one splotch flaking off toward the floor. Her vision blurred, her stomach flipped. Sarah fell to her knees and vomited. Eliza, the AI that controlled her during the day, had been nice enough to plop her right next to the toilet at least, like she knew this would be too much. Sarah's stomach swam as she devolved into dry heaving, then she leaned against the porcelain throne for dear life. The acrid bite of stomach acid and puke mingled alongside the strangely comforting aroma of toilet water. She sat like that for a long while, hacking and cursing until the toilet grew warm beneath her elbows and the hard white tiles of the floor scored her knees. Limbs rubbery and throat burning, she forced herself to her feet and leaned against the sink, careful to avoid the mirror. She didn't need to see her splotchy face right now. From behind her, the telltale sound of the processor let her know dinner was served. Her stomach turned again, but the sink kept her up this time, her bronze skin standing out in stark contrast to the white porcelain. Her fingernails were nub-bitten, skin chapped and dry. It'll be fine, she lied to herself, staring hard at mint green toothpaste splotches in the sink. It wasn't blood, it was something else. Eliza wouldn't make me clean a murder scene. No one died on the ladder. Sarah blinked away blurred vision, clenched her hands in and out of fists as a rocket launched from her stomach and roared its way up her throat. A ragged wail worked its way up from her stomach. It caught her in the back of her throat as the world vibrated. From the blood on her hands to the base of her spine, it filled her. The rawness, the violation. The water kicked on. Soap, too much soap, poured into her hands. Sarah scrubbed, dug under her nails. A numb fear drove her forward. Old memories buried for years threatened to burst from her mind. A broken window, a busted door, 2 bodies piled in the middle of her room. Sarah shook her head. She wasn't a child anymore. She could handle this. Maybe it'd been an animal, some sort of accident. But why would they use her? She was in janitorial, but as far as she knew, she never had to clean up a blood spill. Maybe an errant thumbprint. She'd had a flash of a memory once where she'd clean up broken glass and a few specks of blood, but nothing like what popped into her head this time. Then again, maybe she just hadn't remembered. It didn't happen every shift. But a burning certainty told her this was different. There'd never been a floor and a part of a wall covered in blood spatter before. And the few times she remembered cleaning biospills, she'd use gloves. That was protocol, at least as she remembered it. And then there were the floating, coagulated bits. Had she gone to the top of the ladder? Had she ever been there before? She didn't know, but Eliza wouldn't put her in danger like that, not on purpose. Right? Sarah lifted soap bubble covered fingers and stared. The water shut off automatically. She could still feel the crusted blood in there, staining her skin even if it wasn't visible. Her hands went back under the faucet. Steaming water shot out like a hose, burning her skin as she scoured unseen splotches away. She rubbed until her hands hurt and the mirror blurred with mist. Still, she scrubbed and worried. If she left the UILB, the Unified Interplanetary Launch Base, the company that owned, operated, and controlled the ladder in the Ark, she'd lose her spot to New Eden. She'd lose her only chance at a future, at finding a real home. And if she contracted any sort of disease, they'd dismiss her, even if she got it on the job. She raised her dark, red-limbed eyes to the mirror and saw her mother staring back. Sarah turned away. Maybe it was just an accident. Maybe if she went in and talked to human resources, she could ask them to be more careful. No. She reported this, talked about it. No space, no Ark, no New Eden. You can't trust an automaton if they remember. I won't die on Earth, she hissed at the voice twisting in her mind. A small noise rained through the Eliza cranial implant. Cursing, she tapped behind her left ear. Black block letters appeared in her line of sight. They didn't reflect in the mirror. Reminders for Friday, July 24th, 2076. Mandatory reproductive exam in 30 minutes, 1900 hours. Camilla's B-day in 2 hours, 2130. Oh, fuck me, Sarah said, laying hands rubbed raw in the sink. Her fingers dripped water into the sink. The reproductive exam. There was one every goddamn month. Can't be taking some sterile loser to the first colony. And Camilla, could Sarah even pull that off after today? She and Camilla had been friends since grade school. It was Camilla who'd helped Sarah through some of the worst parts of foster care, who'd helped her enroll in the astrobiology prep course that got her into the ladder staff program. Sarah owed her, even if she didn't think she could follow the dress sexy and be ready to get nasty guidelines Camilla had sent her. Hopefully sweatpants counted as sexy because outside of her work jumpsuit, Sarah didn't think she had anything left to wear. Maybe a single black dress from her ill-advised high school prom, if it still fit. But Jesus, how the hell was she supposed to go out tonight after this? Could she just pretend this hadn't happened? She took a calming breath. Been doing it my entire life. Just another day. Sarah dried off with a hand towel, then risked another look in the mirror. She fixed her shoulder-length black hair and turned away from the ghost in the glass. With a shake of her head, she took another shuddering breath and smoothed tears from her face. She did what she needed to do, what she'd always done. What had gotten her through her parents' murder-suicide, a decade in abusive foster homes. Sarah stared in the mirror, took in a breath, then let it out, and smiled a smile that came nowhere near her eyes.
Nicely done.
Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that opening. Like in particular, just to dig into a little bit of the writing side of it, I really appreciate how much you managed to build that setting and to build the imagery of the space without making it seem like a laundry list. And I know that there are a lot of books, not to call it anything negative, but there are a lot of books that will just give you like setting that feels like a list. And this one, I'm like, I'm in it. I'm immersed. I'm through this character's eyes, and I have a very good sense of where I'm at, what's going on, and the stakes. So yeah, it's an excellent opening chapter. It's a very exciting first preview.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
yeah, I think you did a great reading of it as well.
Okay, because I'm going to throw up a little bit in my mouth.
That's
right
fair. Is it possibly just all the discussion of bile in that section of the story?
I very much related to that in the moment.
Yeah. That's fair. That does happen sometimes. Yeah. Well, so it is a very exciting opening, and it's one of those kinds of things that is going to pull you in and give you the sense of not just the sci-fi vibes, but like I'm going to go with thriller in terms of some of the mood and tone to it, just because of that sense of like this unknown bad thing that has happened and the sense of violation of having somebody else be in control of your body. And I would like to turn a question over to Chris. So Chris Kennedy, And I know a little bit of the background of this one because I know that this book was a pretty recent acquisition and that Mike and Chris met fairly recently. And Chris,
February.
I was hoping that I could get some of your thoughts on, like, what you first noticed when encountering this story, or when you first met Mike, that was like, yep, this is one that we need to have and we need to publish.
Sure. And I'm going to answer this, and then I'm going to have to run. But I wanted to at least pop in and congratulate Mike on the story in the series, because I absolutely don't take everything that's given to me. It's I run CKP like a traditional publisher, and only publish the things that I think the readers are really going to like. Just because you have a story doesn't mean it's going to get published. And one of the things, I'll go back to January at Superstars. Before I want to publish anybody, I want to meet them. And I had the chance to meet Mike at Superstars, and I really liked him. Thought that he was a great guy. I thought that he would fit into the family well, the family of CKP. And was looking forward to reading the story with perhaps some trepidation, because I like this guy and I want to publish his story. Will the story hold up? And that's always the problem. Can the story meet the expectations? And I have a slush reader that usually takes a look first, and I sent it to him, and he got it back to me like just a couple days later, and he's like, "Oh my God, you got to publish this." I spent the whole book going, I don't see how he's going to make this a series, and then at the end, I see how this is going to be a series, and now I'm excited, and I want more, and tell me more. When can I get the next book? Oh, well, as a matter of fact, I have the next book. It's already written. He's like, "Can I have it?" No, sorry. You'll have to wait your turn. So then I got it and I read it, and absolutely it was, he's right on. And I think what you said, Mike, was also, incredibly important, that you read the first chapter and you understand an awful lot about the world, without it really seeming like a list of, okay, this, it's you're immersed in it, you get it, without having to be beaten over the head and shoulders with it. And it's a very different world than we're used to. And I think the ability to give up your body, your life, to go be an automaton is interesting and scary and horrific all at once. But that's part of the draw of the story, and what really makes it different than a lot of the other sci-fi that's out there. This is very obviously an original story that I'm excited to bring to everybody. I think everybody is going to like it, and I expect the series to do really well.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks. Thanks for
You
coming.
bet. Absolutely. I definitely, like I said, I wanted to stop in and congratulate Mike on a job well done. Making it through all of the wickets to get it published and out there, and looking forward to doing the same with 2, 3, 4, 5, and then whatever else he can come up with. So well done.
Thanks.
All right. Yeah. And in the aftermath of the reading, I want to call out a couple of the comments that showed up in the chat. And so, yeah, this is being recorded, and people who are watching the recording thereafter aren't able to see the chat, but we've got a lot of things talking about it just being exciting, very cool. We've got one from Shelby saying, "I'm hooked and eager to read the rest." Julia, you saw all that blood and can't ask about it. Disturbing, and I would agree. And Sean saying, "I really like the detail of the message, not reflecting in the mirror." Yeah, there's some fun stuff that can be picked apart here, which is a great reason for reading. any kind of book series that's going to be able to dig into your psyche a little bit and make you think and possibly a little bit disturbed. And that's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Not
and in terms
Disturbed
of
is
the
actually
idea,
a good book.
what's that?
If you're not disturbed, is it actually a good book or a good
Yeah.
story? I mean, you got to go ew a couple times, right?
Being disturbed is part of the process frequently. Yeah. Cool. And yeah, Chris mentioned that this is a different kind of world and it's an original kind of series, but I'm still going to want to ask, do you have any things that you would compare it to, or any things that you felt inspired you to write this kind of series or this kind of world?
Oh, hi, Mom. Someone mute Dawn, please.
Don, please leave yourself muted. I've muted her 4 times. So
Okay. Thanks, Mom. Anyway, so I kind of wrote this story because I didn't find a lot of stories like it. With a near future twist that had a bit of a not confusing, ambiguous villain. So I like having ambiguous villains. I like having plot points where normally what you would do is you get an author who brings 2 characters together and a single sentence would clear up most of the tension for like the rest of the book. And then for whatever reason, they never say that sentence.
Yeah.
And so the thing that I really wanted to try to do was to get to those points and then have the people say stuff, but then have it not matter. Everything's still going to be horrible. Everything's still going to get worse because that's just the way of things. That's the way the world works. But you could still find like bits of positivity, light, and everything else in those moments of horror or even just levity. So when I was thinking about writing this and spreading it from a short story that I had put together, I initially thought of Old Man's War by Scalzi. And mostly just for some reason, the space elevator and his latched into my brain and I couldn't let go of it. Mine is not Scalzi's space elevator. And but the idea of having the Earth be kind of like this place that's out of touch with the rest of the galaxy spoke to me for the rest of the series. But that cemented kind of the setting for this book to go, okay, right here, the infrastructure is dropping and falling apart, but there's still holdouts of places where they're trying to either save themselves or escape and just take off and leave the planet. And this one takes place in the latter. The latter. I don't know if that answered the question properly, but
it gave a lot of information. I was also curious if there were any titles that you would compare to otherwise. So you mentioned Old Man's War, but are there any others that, like, if you were pitching the book to somebody and say it's kind of like this, and if there's not, that's okay too. I'm just curious.
I was always really bad at the comparables, which is probably why I had a hard time selling it. But hold on a second. I actually have some. Old Man's War was one because I try to bring some humor into everything I write.
Yeah.
And the weird tension that I have throughout the whole thing, where that ambiguousness of villain ends up feeding into every character's internal monologue. I kind of fed off of Chuck Wendig's Invasive for that. Because he's just really good at showing you everything and then just making you figure it out and deal with the consequences.
Yeah.
And so I kind of took a little bit of that into consideration and used that style while writing this book and the follow-ups.
Cool.
But for a direct, like, this is so-and-so meets so-and-so, I was never able to find the right comparables for that one for this book.
Yeah. That is fair. All right. So there are some dystopian elements to this story.
Yes.
And I'm curious, without giving too much away, but thinking ahead into later books, and just in terms of how you see this series, where would you place the role of hope? Because often in dystopia, we get like this intense grimdark, where would you place the role of hope in this story? And do you think that most readers would find that toward the end of book 1 or toward the end of book 5 that it leads toward hope?
I think the ending of this book leads towards hope directly. It is dark. Even though there are bits of brightness in there spread throughout the entire book, the ending ends on an upswing, ends on a positive note that if I say it, I'm going to spoil it, but it's important to me that most everything I write ends with some sort of hope involved. Like I don't just like grimdark. I don't like writing grimdark. I don't like leaving people at the end feeling worse than they did when they picked the book up.
Right.
I want them to feel really bad while they're reading it. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
But by the end, I want it to feel like it was worthwhile, and they come out of it going, okay, well, if that happened, if that worst case scenario was a thing that existed then, and they still managed to get out of it, then maybe we can too. Maybe that's just like a little bit of hope that somebody builds up for, just getting out of bed one day where they just want to pull the covers over their head,
Yeah.
Well, they made it through that tunnel, so I guess I'll get out of bed today.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important for me to have hope be the goal, not necessarily the journey.
Awesome. Yeah. I had that impression, but I figured I would want to hear it in your own words as well. I'm also going to make note. So we're going to be doing a book giveaway later. There are a lot of people who joined after we got started. I'm redropping a link into the chat. It is a Google Forms link, and it's quick survey. Basically, if you want to be entered into a drawing for a book giveaway at the end of this, then you would go ahead and go to that, fill it out, put your name and where we can contact you, and it goes from there. Cool. And at this stage, I want to be able to transition into some of the crowd's questions. And for the Q&A, feel free to write out questions and pop them into the chat. Or if we want to have people raise their hands and we can, have people pop out and ask questions, that is also a doable thing. Before I turn it over in that direction, Mike and or Amy, do you have any other things that you want to just say as blanket statements before we have people start asking other questions about the book and your writing and publishing experiences?
I don't think so. Writing and publishing experience is just very difficult for anybody who's looking to do it. You have to have a thick skin, and you got to really work on the craft a lot before you get anything. Short story sales or any sort of feedback from agents and such. I don't know if anybody's planning on doing that or in the middle of it. I know some of us are in the middle of it. But if you keep going, you eventually get through if you keep getting better and better and working and writing. Yeah, don't just write one book, hold it up and say, okay, this is it. This is my one ticket.
Yep.
Write that book, set it aside, write another book. Halfway when you get bored and hit mental block on the first book or the second book, go back, do your query letter and synopsis for the first book and start sending that out if it's good enough. If not, put it in the trunk and then write the third book and do the same thing and keep going.
Yeah. That's very, I've definitely heard a lot of people say that, you're always in the trenches. Like people talk about you're in the trenches until you have that bing moment of success. But I've heard from a lot of authors who have had what seems to me like a ton of success. Like they've been up on that mountain and they still talk about, no, we're still in the trenches. We're still, put it in the work. We're just, in slightly higher, more well-furnished trenches now. Yeah.
Their maps have frames and stuff.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Cool. Okay. Well, yeah. So if anybody wants to get started with questions, you're totally welcome to. I have a couple on hand to get the ball rolling if people are waiting on questions or possibly not wanting to be the first one to ask. But I'll wait for just a moment to see if we get any of them in the chat that we need to check out. And I will also check to see about responses that we've got for the survey.
Yeah, see, Dallas, you do have to Dallas wrote, I'm glad you reposted the link. I was just about to buy a copy like a sucker.
You know, you can still be that sucker and buy a book, whether or not you get a copy. If you buy the book and then win it and then get it as a gift, then you can gift it to somebody else again too. That's a very
Yeah,
good way
see?
to help spread the book. Yeah. Cool. Well, so Mike, on the question start, I'll get, oh, we've got one from Leah. I'll jump in with Leah's. Leah says, how long ago did you start writing the series?
That is a very good question. I actually have, I guess you would say I have the receipts for that. All right, 1 second. It looks like 2018 is when I started last bid for A Dying Earth, which at the time, up until probably right before I went to I think after I got to, right before I went to Superstars, Amy and I were sitting around the table pitching alternative ideas for the title because it was called The Ladder, which is not a very sexy name. So yeah, 2018 is when I started that one. I think I finished it in late 2018. Then I worked on Fallen Hunter, which is the second book, and Set Far in the Future, to head off the series. Question. That one I finished in 2020, then Focus on the Wind I finished in 2021. And Charred Hunter is about 10 to 20,000 words away from being finished. So that will be 2022, obviously, and hopefully the other one. So grand total, about 4 years.
Nice. Yeah. And along those lines, somebody else asked, Michael asked, another Michael on the call, yay. Which of the 4 books did you enjoy writing the most and why? Or is it the 5th now? So yes, maybe you anticipate enjoying the 5th book the most.
I think the one that I enjoyed the most is Fallen Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
So the next one, hopefully no one hates me for this, but it's a pretty big time jump. It's 400 years. And it goes from the events on the ladder to a little bit of space wizardry. So hopefully folks enjoy that jump. Otherwise, people are gonna hate me a lot. But having that science fantasy kind of like crossover thing with still the hard sci-fi background made it a ton of fun. And I got to harass the Mike who asked the question and Jamie, who's also in that video there, a bunch of physics questions to make sure that I was doing it right, because Jamie is the resident astrophysicist that I bug whenever I think I'm screwing something up.
That's convenient. Yeah.
Fallen Hunter was awesome because it was, establish all the actual background lore and how all of the FTL actually works and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, that one was fun because there was a lot of discovery. There was a lot setting up the world. Focus on the Wind was probably the most satisfying one though, because it's the longest one so far, but it was the first one set kind of in a very, it allowed me to stretch my legs in different ways than I have in the past. And I got to try out a bunch of new techniques that I think worked really well. Most of those I then took and threw back on Last Bid for a Dying Earth and on Fallen Hunter because they thought they worked so well. So favorite one, Fallen Hunter, most satisfying, Focus on the Wind.
Very cool. Yeah. Yeah, the way we were describing kind of going into the space travel plus a little bit of that mysticism in there definitely made me think of the Foundation series, which also has massive time jumps and then has the plot with the mule and a lot of things that could fit into science fantasy or space fantasy. And I guess one other comment, we've got a very excited person saying wizards in space.
Yes.
I'm not sure if we're part of an overlap group for this, but there's one writing group where space wizards were just always rebranded as Spizzards after a couple months ago, and it was like, yep, Spizzards has become a new thing. But yeah,
I can live with that. That works.
Yeah.
It's wizards.
Oh, it doesn't have to be for you, but it is in my head. Yeah. We've one that, so it looks like this is a direct message, but I'll go ahead and ask it out loud anyway. So we've got a question from Edward saying, are the characters based on real world people? Once again, to your discretion, Mike, but are any of the characters based on real world people?
Dave is based on me pretty closely. I mean, in yeah, I won't spoil it, but yes, it's Dave is based on me. And Sarah, a lot of her stuff, her personality and strength of character and everything, I took from Amy. But Amy's actually a character in the second book, so can't really give that away completely. Other than that, the one of the people who could be the villain is based on a couple people I actually knew. So when sometimes I felt like they came off a little too cartoony, but then it was like, I'm essentially quoting people here. So it's not cartoony. I've met people like these. That one I'm not going to apply a name to, though.
Nice. Yeah, we've got a question from Julia. How did you make the decision to continue writing books 2, 3, and 4 before finding publisher? And it sounds like timeline wise, you had started book 4 after working with the publisher, yeah?
No, yes, book 4 was actually in progress.
Okay.
So the first 3 books in this series, Last Bid for Dying Earth, Fallen Hunter, and Focus on the Wind, I originally wrote all those to be standalones. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is I did that on the advice of the late David Farland. I was chatting with him about my books and pitching, and he suggested keep writing new books that could be standalones but tie together. And so I kept doing that. I kept tying them all together until Chris gave it a shot, read it, and put them together. At which point I realized there's some big time jumps, and they are all technically standalones that are connected, but the characters aren't the same until the 4th book. Oh. Once we hit the 4th book, then it's more consistent, like with what folks would expect from traditional like trilogy and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Intriguing.
But yeah. That's how I came up with that. It was based on the advice of an old mentor.
Yeah. I think that sounds like a great idea. It's very much like best of both worlds. And I mean, unless I'm recalling incorrectly, I think the first time that you talked to me about the series, you had talked about them as standalones, and you weren't sure if you could pitch it as a series. Yeah. But hey, it works. So yeah.
Yeah. When I cornered you at the halls and the Superstars, I think I was like, okay, here's what I got. They are technically all interconnected, but is it going to work?
Yeah. Well, so because Superstars come up a couple times by now, with you and Chris, and then you again, can you give a brief commentary on Superstars writing seminars, what it is, and just in case there are people watching who are unfamiliar with it and might consider going, if you can, give your experience of Superstars.
If you are an author who is looking to actually make a career out of writing, you should try to go to Superstars. If you can afford it, if you can make it work, Superstars in Colorado Springs is amazing. It's when I walked in there, I was hyperventilating as soon as I got off the airplane, and it wasn't just because of the thin air in Colorado Springs. It was because I had never talked to anybody about my books in person in real life besides Amy, and sometimes the other Mike, not Mike Jack, but Mike Costello, because he's a co-author on the fantasy series that we've been working on for years. And it was terrifying. And the first thing that happened was I met up with Leah, Becky, and Liz, and we all just started talking about writing. And then Elise came in, and we kept talking about writing. And Ari, and I met Ari on a plane. I don't know why I ended with him, but Nicole, Julia, like everybody who's there is there to be a professional author in some way, shape, or form. Whether they plan on making a living off of it or not, I don't know. But everybody wants to be the best they can. And all the mentors that are there. I mean, Martin, Maya's there. All these folks who are awesome are willing to just talk to you about pretty much anything if you buy them a beer at BarCon. I mean, that is just the price of knowledge. I think that's universal. But it's if you're looking to be a professional writer, it's the place. It is some place to go. It is it's the best thing I ever did for my career. I know I think I'm starting to ramble now, but
No, that's fine.
it's awesome. It's fantastic. There was absolutely zero bad things that happened. It was 100% positive interactions and reinforcement.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I will also note I'm not directly affiliated with Superstars Writing Seminars. I am also a huge fan of it as a business of writing place. And yeah, I will also say that like great place for getting to know people who are very positive in the community and really want to see the best success from everyone that they're interacting with. And that's great. And Maya went ahead and put the link in the chat just in case people want to follow up with that. Yeah, so Mike, there was a question about audiobooks. Do you know if there are plans in the works for audiobooks?
I don't know if there's officially any plans. I'm assuming so because it looks like every other book series gets them, but I don't know for certain.
That is fair. Yeah, and it's one of those things that so I can
Thanks, Maya.
a little bit as as another person in the CKP author group. There are some books where they will try to set up the audiobook pretty close to concurrently with release, and that depends on like which ones have longstanding followings. But for the most part, newer series after they've been out for 6 months to a year, they start putting the audiobook work in, and it's one of those things that's going to vary by project and by schedule and by other things that they have going on. In theory, Theogony books will be made into audiobooks. It's just a question of when and what the steps are that go into it. So yeah, and sometimes you will hear more about it than others, and so I have no idea what you've gone through personally, but that's the general umbrella that I'm aware of as well.
That is more than I have, so thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So I'm going to ask a couple of the go-to questions on this. In terms of the life of putting together this series, idea, writing it, getting it to the publisher, the process of editing, and finally saying launch. Over the course of all of that, what was the most difficult struggle in making that happen?
The hardest part, so there's technically the hardest part for me, which was the middle of the book, which I think is kind of a universal like challenge for everybody. Even if you have an outline, even if it's all well planned out, you get to the middle and you go, oh my God, I'm so sick of this thing. I need to go do something else for a while. But realistically, the hardest part was the pitching to publishers and agents and trying and stacking rejections. That you can have the thickest skin in the world at some point when you hit 50 or 60 rejections from places saying, hey, it's a good book, but no. It does get to you after a while.
Yep.
Luckily, that's what writing other books are for.
Yeah. Well, and then the flip side of that one. So over the life of this project, what was the most gratifying moment?
When it sold.
Yeah. I assumed as much based on the way you were saying it. I planned both questions in advance, but I'm like, all right, this one lines up well.
Yeah. But realistically, when I actually finished it and I got up and I walked away and went, oh my God, it's actually done. I finished it. That one's done. I can go take a break and start writing a different book.
Yeah. Cool.
Now that sounds like madness now that I say it out loud.
Oh,
repeatedly doing something that drives you nuts.
Yeah, but I don't know. If you enjoy some parts of the process or you're learning along the way, there's something to be said for it. I mean, I think a lot of people repeatedly doing something that drives them nuts could describe their day job or their process from like whatever grade they started questioning a school through the end of college. So it's yeah, cool. So not wanting to pull the focus too far away from Last Bid for a Dying Earth, but wanting to check in on some other things in your writing life, because typically authors are not just, focused on the one book. There's a series here, but you also have some other projects going on. Can you tell us a little bit about your work with Night Shift Radio? And
sure. I'm the editor for not Night Shift Radio. Then sorry, Michael, don't kill me. I am the editor for the Storyteller series for Night Shift Radio. We pick up short-ish fiction novellas, 7,000, 10,000 words, and publish one of those a month as full cast audiobooks. So every character gets a part. Everybody has a unique voice. Well, as best we can anyway. And yeah, we pop those out once a month along with the print edition, which is just a kind of standard online magazine type of thing, though without any ads. We just pop it up so that you can go read it. And yes, I think that's
Yeah.
it. That's a
Okay.
summary of what I do there.
Cool. Yeah, and we've got a link to that one from Amy in the chat if you want to check out the Storyteller Series podcast. Is it currently accepting submissions? I'm trying to remember the
Yes.
timelines.
Until tomorrow at midnight.
Oh, brilliant. So yeah, so those of you who are
Yeah,
currently
perfect
here,
timing.
yeah, accepting submissions until tomorrow at midnight. If you didn't know that it existed, you can go ahead and submit something that fits those parameters. I think it's at 7,000 to 10,000 words. Those of you who are watching the recording, posted on YouTube after the fact, check.
Yeah, go to storytellerseriesPodcast.com and check there.
Yeah. And then in terms of other projects and other writings that you're doing, so that you're working on co-writing a fantasy series, and on the short story side of things, you recently were a semifinalist in the Writers of the Future contest.
I was.
So yeah, so semifinalist Writers of the Future contest. Congratulations on that one.
Thanks.
Yeah, and that's for those of you who don't know, Writers of the Future is an international contest for short stories that has been for a long time, judged by Dave Farland, who, Mike, you were mentioning, was a mentor of yours, unfortunately recently passed. But wanting to call that one out in a positive way, even if there's some bittersweet around Dave having passed, and I apologize on that one, but I wanted to address it anyway.
Well, the fun part is that's my second finalist, semifinalist. And the other one was titled Fallen Hunter, which the feedback I got from Dave was something along the lines of, this needs to grow. It feels like it needs to grow a little. Mm-hmm. And he gave me some like very specific feedback in one part. And I got very angry at that feedback and decided I'm going to write a whole damn novel about this thing and prove him wrong. And then I went back and I proved nothing wrong. He was right. He was always right. And the one that I just got is another Anisian Convergence story. I was going to give it as a giveaway, but then as I was like prepping it, I realized it's actually a spoiler for the end of the series. So it's going to have to wait for a while before I get it to you.
Yeah. And it's probably one to also eventually talk to Chris Kennedy about and figure out if there's a place for it somewhere along the lines. Yeah. Cool.
On the fantasy series, that's called Maybes, and that's the map for it back there. Plus some maps that Mike and Jamie's son Rory is putting together that are amazing. He just started doing them, and I got pictures, and they're like hand drawn and like colored in, and I'm like, holy crap, this is better than what I did. It's better. Yeah. A friend of mine, Kevin Ashton, kind of knit together a hand-drawn map, and I used that to build this one years ago, like decades ago. And like, so two adults put together a map that looks pretty decent. And then how old? I think Rory's 9 or 10 now. Yeah, 9. And he did a better job than I did. So
yeah. I mean, I think there's something important in knowing when to delegate to people who are better at that.
Right? I'm never doing another map again. I don't know what you're talking about. Never touching them.
Excellent.
I've got child labor for that, apparently.
All right, so we'll debate whether or not to edit that portion out, just in case.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah. Do you have any other publications or short stories coming out in the near future that you can talk to us about? If there are acceptances that you can't tell us yet, then keep those under wraps, or feel free to hint or tease as much as you'd like. But
I have kind of stopped writing short fiction after I got back from Superstars for the obvious reasons. Yeah. But I did get a heart story of mine in Particular Passages 2. I don't know if that's actually showing properly or not, or if it's mirrored.
That's great.
That one, it's a very short fiction piece for me. I usually write between 8,000 and 20,000 word stories because I don't know how to shut up. And that one's about 1,800 words. That one's very nice. That's a wonderful anthology. Martin's in it with me. I think a couple other people are too. And it's just a great collection of stories. So if folks are looking for something quick to read, Particular Passages 2 is pretty good.
Awesome.
East Wayne specifically. Apparently we don't get the whole floor. I think that's
Yeah.
all I have coming out besides the other 4 books.
Right. Yeah. Besides those things.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
Besides all that,
small extra mention.
yeah, I think that's the only story I have coming out anywhere right now. Pretty sure.
Okay. Cool. All right. So before I go into the drawing for the book giveaway, want to give any kind of last chance for people who want to get on the book giveaway survey. We posted the link a couple times. I can redrop it unless I have actually copied something else in between time. Nope, looks like I still got that. Cool. So there is the link for the survey. As a last chance for that, we're going to go ahead and do that in another few minutes here. Mike, I want to ask the question that I always ask in these kinds of things. For people who are aspiring writers or other kinds of creatives, what is a big piece of advice that you would like to leave them with? What is the thing that you can impart as wisdom to the world? And yes, I'm going to build you up on this pedestal right now, and you're welcome to enjoy the view from up there. What is your
Okay.
advice?
Routine trumps inspiration. Routine will always beat out inspiration anytime. If you're trying to be a professional writer, then set aside a specific spot, because it's a specific time and place, and meet and go to that spot, go at the right time and write. It might be garbage, it might just be drivel, but after enough time, the very act of going to that seat, of going to that space, is going to turn on the creative gears in your mind because it's used to it. Okay, I sit down and I have to write here. Yeah, after 6 months, you're going to need to get up and write someplace else. That's just how things work. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But if you feel like you've been like stifled by writer's block, best thing you can do if you're not having a panic attack is sit down and try to write something, or try to do something in the writing. Edit previous stories, edit old stories that you pull out of the trunk to see if they're actually any good. But sit down at 1 to 3 in the afternoon. That's your writing time. You sit down 1 to 3 in the afternoon and you write, or you do something about writing.
Awesome. All right. Any last questions, comments, curiosities before we get into the book drawing? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my random number generator. This is not a very high-tech choosing process. I look at the survey, I look at the names that are on there, I set up a random number generator that has that many people, and I click go. And as I recall, we were going to do 2 of them, 2 drawings from people who were here.
Yeah, it's going to take a little bit for me to get the books out because my author copies won't be here till the middle of the month.
Yep.
But once I have them, I'll sign them and pitch them out to you as quickly as I can.
Awesome. All right. So rolling for our first person, the first winner of a book giveaway of Last Bid for Dying Earth is Shelby.
Hey, Shelby.
Shelby, and oh, my thing's not set up where the last names are in the same place as the first name, so let me try that one more time in the way that I can see it more effectively. Shelby, what's your last name so that I can make sure it's lined up in my spreadsheet?
My last name is Mehmet, Mehmet.
Excellent. Shelby Mehmet is one of our winners. Thank you, Shelby, and congratulations. And going for the second one, rolling again with some amount of drum rolling. And our second one goes to Wendy Anderson. Congratulations, Wendy.
Woo! Hi, Wendy. I didn't see you.
Okay. Excellent. And I have the info and surveys, and that I'll be sending to Mike and Amy.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Mike and Amy, are there any other things that you want to add while we're still all here?
Buy my book.
Good, succinct. I like that one.
Yeah. I think that's all I got. This has actually been a lot of fun, and we
Yeah.
covered a lot more than I thought we were going to. So,
yep. Excellent. Yeah, well, we'll be wrapping up the official thing in a few minutes. So after we do the outro, I'll go ahead and close the recording on my end. And if people want to hang out, chat, ask questions, turn on your video because you were sheepish too beforehand, you're totally welcome to do so. In the coming days, I'm going to go through it, see if there's anything that needs to be edited or touched up, and then pop it onto YouTube in the Zoom book launch party channel. So Mike and Amy, thank you for joining. I'm Mike Jax-Tumbos, host of the Zoom book launch party, and next week on Thursday, I'll post it online somewhere. Next week, June 2nd, unless I'm mistaken, we're doing a book launch of Len Barry's Stars of Shadow. So if you like this and want to get to know more authors, their process, and their books, then please join these ones. And if you are an author who has a book coming out in the near future and you would like to have it hosted in a Zoom book launch party, then message me. We'll get that one sorted. Otherwise, if you have not already done so, please go out and get your own copy of Last Bid for a Dying Earth. And I really like the advice from earlier that you are totally welcome to grab the ebook, read it quickly, and then order a physical one later so that when you find Mike in person, you can get him to sign it and, gush over how much you loved it the next time you see him at a convention or conference. But otherwise, thank you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and close things out here. Have a good evening. I'll hope to see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. All right.